So today I'm really going to be focusing on talking about AI agents from prototype production. But just a quick introduction about myself. My name is Olivia LaHair. I am a solutions engineer here at Airia. I've been here for about a year, a little over actually, and I was one of the first couple brought on. So we're a pretty new company, we're pretty young, but we are advancing pretty quickly along with the space that we're in. And I'm really excited to talk to you today about the different facets of AI agents, like what you should be focusing on, what you should be looking towards, and all of that. So today's agenda is starting with what's stalling your AI agent deployments, AI and all of the risks that surround it, because that's been a really big topic that we've been hearing lately, and then finding tools to embrace your AI usage. So before I really get started, I really want to sit and ask, what is blocking your AI deployments? As you're building things out, what is blocking them? Please go ahead and post something in the chat. So a lot of the things that we hear for AI agents, what's stopping them, what's blocking them, are outages, honestly. So there's a little bit of both. There's things that we can control and things that we can't control, and expected and unexpected. And a lot of what we hear are outages. So ChatGPT going out for a day, OpenAI, Anthropic, Perplexity, all of these different pieces that you're utilizing throughout all of your AI deployments, whether it be a singular and you focus really heavily on one provider, or it be a wider spread. So if you're utilizing kind of an AI agnostic approach, in fact, over the weekend, Anthropic had a very large outage for quite a few hours, and it really takes some time to overcome those hurdles, especially if you're not prepared for them or if you don't have any resiliency in place or anything like that. Another large one that we're starting to hear focuses a lot around security. So especially as we're using MCPs and they're not always in secure servers, we hear a lot around vulnerabilities within MCPs. We hear security gaps within them across like even the individual providers. And we hear a lot about other security measures. So prompt injection, jailbreak, HTML injection, URL injection, all of these different things that are happening, and we aren't fully prepared for them, honestly. And so what can we do to avoid putting these vulnerabilities in place? What can we do to mitigate all of these vulnerabilities as we're building our AI agents, as we're putting sensitive proprietary information into these individual agents, as we're growing them for our individual use and our company? We want to make sure that the data that we're putting into them is completely secure. So these are some of the risks that we have identified at Airia for AI sprawl, shadow AI, and even just individual organizations using AI. Because once you are the one utilizing it, or you are the one pushing it out to your company, you're on the hook for anything that happens. And we see a lot with especially MCPs, APIs, as you're pulling in different data points, as you're pulling in individual websites, things like that, we see a lot of increased vulnerabilities. There's a lot more entry points for cyber attacks, whether that be, just like I said, prompt injection, jailbreak, URL detection, anything like that. So making sure that you're focusing very heavily on securing those, watching for your accuracy for your outputs. So are you getting biased outputs? Are you getting unreliable outputs based on what you're putting into it, based on the data that it's pulling back? Is your data secure? So as you're pulling in this, is it fully secured into Airia or into whatever platform you choose to use? Are you able to secure it against attacks? Are you able to secure it against even other individuals within your company that they're not supposed to? Are you following compliance? So do you have any GDPR rules? Do you have anything that you need to focus on for like HIPAA, anything like that? Are you okay with putting your integrity into the agent? Are you able to completely and securely say that the next generation of models aren't on your confidential data? And then finally, are you able to connect to your systems or even to the other people and individuals in your organization or in your circle using AI? So what are we doing to make this a more functional network of AI and of technology? The first step is identifying the AI in your organization. So making sure that you're ahead of the problem instead of behind it. And one thing that we see very importantly in this is your data risk classification. So or do you have low risk things like grammar checking, calendar scheduling, meeting agents, basic automation pieces, things like that. Is it more medium risk? So things that you're going to be exposing to the environment around you, content creation, research assistance that you may or may not read all the way through and you're trusting has good data. Your productivity tools, making sure that it's scheduling correctly, making sure that the automation is running correctly. And then finally, your high risk. So other data that is going to interact with your deployments or even your customers on the long end. So making sure any of the customer data that's coming in is secure and is being used correctly. Any code that you're generating is secure and properly running. And strategic decision making. So big decisions that we're trusting LLMs. Are these all safe? Are they all secure? And what risks do they carry? So the biggest thing that we see are the different, like I was saying, is the different levels of discovering your AI. So starting at layer 1 level detection. So being able to block and warn and redirect against individual AI sprawl. So if you have an individual AI contributor, making sure that your individual or organization aren't reaching out to those. So for example, if you're utilizing Airia to make a secure chat of some kind, people aren't going to ChatGPT, they're not going to Claude, they're not going to Gemini. So avoiding that personalized use. Next is your device level. So if they're not on whatever browser that you've installed a detection software on, can you use it on your device? Do they have apps downloaded? What kind of things can we do for MCPs, for those internal servers? Layer 3 is where we really start to see some big change happening, and that's at network level detection. So integrating with SASE, identifying those AI risks and those AI traffic patterns, which people are going to what endpoint, monitoring that data flow, making sure that you're not putting in proprietary information. And then finally, your API level. So querying for API usage signals, analyzing that communication data. And when you get to these layers, as you dig deeper and deeper and deeper into that more intensive discovery, you get a comprehensive visibility layer, which that is one of the more important things that we hear with AI is being able to open the black box of sorts and being able to take a so what is your AI doing? Who's using it? What data is it processing? All of that, whether it be from point solutions, whether it be from your legacy vendors that are adding your AI in, whether that be from individual subscriptions, what are we doing? And how does that impact our data usage and our AI usage across our organization? And are we safe? So as the environment is changing with AI, you also have to change. And originally when AI was starting to come out and when corporations were really looking at AI, there was kind of a rush to put blanket bans in place to be really fear-based in the messaging, making sure that people knew like all of AI is bad, you shouldn't put any data in there, you should be really careful about it, all of that. We'd have reactive policies. So after something happened, like an echo leak, then we would put policies in place to avoid the next one. And then we're implementing all of these solutions to try and fix a problem that may already be fixed, that some people are fixing by themselves. So we're having all of these blanket bans, these massive solutions that aren't really effective and are hindering AI buy-in, honestly. So the new way that we're seeing really movement towards is your controlled AI adoption. So making what we call a crawl, walk, run approach. So those smaller chunks of AI to move forward and rolling them out in controlled groups and controlled manners, putting that visibility around it. The risk-informed decision-making. So can I do this? Why am I doing this? What are the risks associated with rolling out this AI? What about to these people? What about integrating it in this way? If I pull in this code base, does that impact the way that I'm doing things? Proactive governance. So again, back to that visibility, making sure that you can see all of the different layers of what's going on, all of the impact that we have to ensure that as you are moving through and as you are interacting with AI, that you have visibility, that you know what's going on, and that you can be ready for the next step before that next step happens. And then finally, employee empowerment and everybody's empowerment with guardrails. So everybody wants AI. It is moving forward. It is a great help, and it is fantastic, especially for those productivity apps. But you also need to have that security layer in place. We've learned a lot from the past year, the past 2 years with all of the AI policies going into place and all of the movement that we've seen. And so being able to add guardrails, to add security over top of these AI agents that you're building, encouraging people to use AI rather than hindering it, will really, really help AI adoption. It helps productivity, and it helps avoid AI sprawl, in all honesty, because you're putting a layer in place and then encouraging people to use the tools that you have, especially if you're hearing it from the employees themselves or the individual contributors themselves, instead of trying to overarching broadband decisions. We used to hear a lot, I need to hide my AI use, we have a lot going on, we're not aware of it, all of these things. And now we're hearing a lot of, I want AI tools that are improved, I want them that are safe, I want them that are better, because I want to be able to share what I'm doing with AI amongst my colleagues. And so being able to implement all of these solutions with guardrails helps move AI forward and move your AI adoption forward. So these are some statistics that we really like and that we hear from. And that's starting with the average annual loss to shadow AI, whether that be through lost information, whether that be through misinformation, or even losing proprietary data to LLM that just gets leaked. That's $600,000 a year. And that is a massive amount, even to like a small startup. That is a massive, massive, massive amount, and can be really devastating, especially if it's your proprietary information. And then 70% of AI run with vulnerabilities. So being part of that 30% that is running in a safe, in a controlled manner is so, so important. What we see is the best use case to start out with, especially encouraging AI rollout, is enabling a sanctioned AI on one AI platform. So not trying to pull in all of these different point solutions, not trying to say, we're going to use Copilot over here and we're going to use GPTs over here, and we're going to try and balance all of these. It's pulling it into one platform and putting important pieces into place. So overall, just things to look for your orchestration tool: being model agnostic. I'm sure, as many of us know in this chat, not all models are the same, and they're not all made to do the exact same thing either. And so looking for a platform that is model agnostic is so important, because an Anthropic model doesn't work the same as a GPT model. They have different strengths, all of these different things. Being able to build with natural language, there is an importance, of course, to a coding language, being able to communicate in a natural language, build these things out to push to other people who have that coding knowledge, allows you to integrate your AI deeper into your organization across more individuals. Having a simple agent build, being able to drag and drop things, easily connect things, rather than having to worry about massive code bases to empower your AI, wildly important for citizen development. Adding on that layer of Python for custom work. So even if you're focusing on development, there needs to be that more deterministic piece. Some cost optimization capabilities. So being able to know, where am I spending? Why am I spending that? Can we optimize that cost? Can we optimize that cost by not making as many API calls? What can we do to balance this? And then finally, the part that is arguably most important for AI adoption is to meet your users where they are. So utilizing browser extensions when you're implementing these things, utilizing Slack, Outlooks, Teams, Word plugins, all of these different places, meeting end users where they are rather than where they're not. So trying to force them into a brand new solution rather than they're using it, meeting them in Slack. Our greatest use cases come from people who are meeting their users where they are, whether that be on a front-end page that they already use internally or in their Slack and their Outlook. So really integrating into your systems. The biggest thing about AI is that it is a fast-moving environment. I'm also aware of that. So being able to build quickly and integrate quickly, building securely, as all of we talked about, and building agents and not just assistants are all so important through your AI journey. So starting with your comprehensive AI management, you want to discover and identify and inventory all of the AI agents that you have deployed. So meaning that even if you're building across multiple platforms, if you're building across all of these different pieces, you can integrate comprehensively and you can see what's going on. The next piece is being able to secure. So putting that layer in place to ensure that whatever platform you use, whatever building you have, it is secure. Your end users are secure. Your data is secure. You want to be able to ensure all of those pieces of information aren't going to train the next edition of the model, aren't going to people who are looking for malicious attacks, all those different pieces. Enabling everybody to embrace and utilize it. So again, meeting people where they are, not trying to not being able to put implementations in place and utilize it, making sure that you are ensuring that you are in a place that powers everybody around you rather than you trying to force something that isn't going to run. Optimizing, so continually improving your AI deployments, ensuring that any models you're using are the next level, making sure that you're not using depreciated pieces, making sure that you're doing cost optimization, all of these different pieces. And then finally, governing. So we started with discovering and we're in securing, but we're ending with governing, because if you're securing these, but you're not watching them, you're not observing, what are you observing them for? You want to make sure that you're continually updating that security. You're making sure that people are using it appropriately. You're not putting bias, you're not putting toxicity, you're not putting inappropriate data, all of these pieces. So this is where you want to think about your complete platform across an organization rather than your individual point solutions that you might be looking at. That's your AI security. So mitigating your vulnerabilities, doing AI discovery, agent constraints, so making sure that any MCPs, any APIs that you're utilizing aren't reaching out to the wrong thing. They're not doing their own mind management almost. So being able to say, if this email is going outside of our organization, then don't send it. Having your security posture management, so being completely aware of what's going on in your entire environment. Again, not just in one platform where one person is building, but anything that has been built, meeting those people in your organization who are utilizing AI and other places, having visibility around it, putting your responsible AI guardrails around. So any PII, any proprietary information, anything like that, putting guardrails around that it's safe, and then red teaming your agents. So we spoke a little bit about some back-end stuff, so making sure that you're not reactive. That agent red teaming is making sure that you're active. So investigating your agents, testing them against both agent orchestrated and campaign-based information. So seeing that across all pieces, across all potentials, that your agent is safe. Your agent orchestration, because you haven't built, is being able to have an agent builder, so something easy, something to work in. Your data integration, whether that be RAG-based, whether that be vectorized, whether that be API-based and managed, being able to integrate with the data that you have rather than just having, again, an assistant. Doing an enterprise search, so how can I make this as easy as possible to interact with? Doing your prototyping, so not putting things out into deployment immediately and being prototype, cost optimization, and your model lifecycle management. We are, again, I'll say it, we are in a rapidly moving space. It is evolving all of the time. So what can we do to make sure that we are on top of that, we are filtering through agents, that we are filtering through models that are being depreciated, all of these things. And then your governance. So I spoke about this earlier as well. We're securing, we're orchestrating, but are we paying attention to what's happening? Or are we just building these things that we're putting out into the ether and not paying attention to, again, not listening to what's going on with them? Are they working correctly? Do we have agents that are being built for the same purpose? What can we do to optimize what we're doing while paying attention and securing it? So putting that observability in place and auditing all of the agents that you're building, putting in risk classification. So as people are utilizing them, if they're global, making sure that they fall under all of the proper risk classifications, following compliance reporting if you're in a heavily monitored field, whether that be health, finance, legal, anything like that, being able to apply compliance reporting, being able to pay attention to your governance, and even pass off to an AI governance committee. So making sure that you are fully prepared for any eventuality that has to do with AI. One of the things that I hear the most in my role is that AI is a black box, that people aren't fully aware of what they're integrating with, that they don't know what it's doing, they don't know anything about it. when having governance and when having your governance committee, you can pay attention. You can put that observability layer in place and you can open that black box, decrease the fear surrounding AI. There should be caution, 100%, but there should never be fear. So all of this sits on top of the ability to have a different pieces. So your data integration can platform integrate with your Zapier? Can it integrate with your HubSpot? Can it integrate with your Jira? All of these different pieces, can you integrate with live data and static data? Do you have the ability to pull in MCPs from various places, or are you kind of stuck in one scenario? Do you have the ability to pull in agents that other people have built? Do you have the ability to rapidly prototype off of things that are being shared, so an open source version? Do we have model agnosticness? So can I use OpenAI models? Can I use anything like that? Or do I have to use Copilot? Do I have to use exclusively Gemini? Do I have to use exclusively Perplexity? Or can I try all of these different versions? Do you have flexible deployment options? We talked about meeting your people where they are. Can I deploy to my Slack? Can I use the API? Or do I have to have a singular version? And then finally, your role-based access. So making sure that you are able to control who is accessing what. Should only your HR team have access to an individual model or an agent? Should only your IT team, should only your security team be able to access any security settings that you have? Being able to put that access control in place and ensure that you are putting that additional security level in place. So finally, setting yourself up to success. This is the part that I will put a little Airia spin onto it. It's your success goes beyond your deployments, and that's your internal hackathons, thriving support community, and making sure that you have a collaborative environment. As we are building out, we want to ensure that you can collaborate with the person that you're interacting with, that you aren't just, again, in your own black box, that you don't know what's going on with this platform, but you can have direct feedback to whoever's building it. Making sure that your platform is secure. So our team specifically has over 2 decades in shaping the cybersecurity landscape with OneTrust and AirWatch. So we focus really hard into security standards. Innovation at scale. So you might be starting with a singular AI agent now, but what about in a year? What about in 2 years? Being able to move into that large advancement platform and focus on a model agnostic approach allows you to grow faster. And then building at scale. So we are rapidly outpacing a growing market. AI is growing faster than any other market that we've seen in a long time. So being able to keep up with it and innovate with it is important. So I know that I've talked a lot and I haven't been able to look quite at the chat. So I'm going to go in. If anybody has any questions, I would be glad to. I also have one of my counterparts, Anders. He's in here, should be answering questions in the chat as well.
I think we have some questions in the...
Yes, quite a few. So today isn't specifically opened. Today is not supposed to be meant for building. Today was to talk about security a lot. But I see that there's a question about guardrails. What are the limitations? Realistically, the limitations focus very heavily on how you build them out. So in our platform specifically, we focus on regex code for our DLP. So being able to basically parameterize what you're looking for. So a lot with like PII, PHI, being able to say, I want to focus on names, I want to focus on credit card numbers. So they tend to be a little bit more broad, and then you can focus them down into individual keywords. So it really is about how precise you are looking. I will say one larger limitation is when they are like a name or like a credit card number, you can get a little bit of fuzz in there. And so it's about how Do you want to track it? Do you just want to audit? Do you want to block it every time you think somebody's putting a credit card in there? It really depends on what you're looking at. Next, so elaborating a little more on orchestration and best practices. That is a little bit of a broad term, seeing as orchestration is a broad subject. I would say being able to focus on what your end goal is and being able to build it out. So if you just go into this thinking that one LLM is going to fix your entire solution, you're just going to do one LLM, one broad prompt, and you have a pretty large idea, then you're not going to get through what you're wanting to do. Breaking it down into individual pieces and being very precise with what you want each LLM to do, what you want your data source to do, what information you're trying to pull back, is typically what I suggest for best practices. If you can map it out almost like a flow chart and describe in detail what you want the LLM to accomplish, then you are going to have a much more successful LLM or a successful agent. One thing that was told to me when I started in the AI world, and it sticks with me a lot and I share a lot, is if you approach your prompting like you're teaching a young child to do the dishes, you're going to get a way better answer. And I think that works for the entire AI agent scale. And so if I just give it general information, if I just kind of don't scope anything down, I'm going to get dirty dishes. I'm not going to get a good answer. Whereas if I'm positive and I'm clear about what data I'm trying to pull back and what information, then I can very specifically get good information out of it. I can say, I want the dishes scrubbed, I want the dishes to be rinsed off, I want them dried. If I'm clear about that in my prompt as well, I'm going to get good information. I know that was a bit roundabout and a bit rambly, but I hope that answered it. Let's see, what else? So how do you decide between using Python or orchestration for agents? Python for orchestration versus agents. I think it depends on what you're trying to build out. So Python is really helpful for deterministic steps. My background is very heavily in coding. And so I do tend to reach for Python a lot, but as LLMs evolve and as we get better on a whole with RAGing, with vectorization, with API calls and MCPs, and the LLMs get better, you need Python a little bit less because you can be a little more deterministic in your prompting or in your input prompts as well. So if you need something that has a very deterministic response, then I think you don't need Python as much. Can I clarify what was said about personal AI, since many people have 2 to 3 on their phone? I'm definitely not recommending prohibition by any means. I'm recommending visibility into personal AI. So, and visibility into personal AI in a corporate sense. So I use personal AI outside of my corporate work, but I don't put any corporate information into it. I don't put any sensitive information into it. I don't put information about my job, anything like that. AI should be treated very cautiously. When you are working in a corporation or even just a smaller company, having that visibility into what people are doing, especially if you have proprietary information and you might have concern about it, I think that's extremely, extremely, extremely important. On a personal level, you should still be careful. You shouldn't put like your social security number in there. You shouldn't put your passport number, anything like that, just because it's unsafe and there are a lot of data breaches within AI. But that goes to the next level, in my opinion, when you are talking about a company, because you not only have to think about the security of your individual contributors, but also the security of what you are doing for a living. Best practices for role-based access LLMs. Again, I think it really depends on what you're trying to do. Unfortunately, that is a really big answer within AI, is it depends. If you are in a corporation, what I've noticed through my career here is you should be prescriptive about who you give access to adding LLMs and have direct access to it. Especially if you have certain data attached, you should focus on role-based access there. So making sure that the correct contributors have access. So like if I have HR documentation that might have individual people's information, I don't want somebody in engineering to just be able to go ask what are their salaries and why. So being able to constrain who's looking at it, being able to constrain what's going on, then you can really focus on how you want to level that out. Another example is we at Airia separate out security. I don't want just a random developer to go in there and clear all of our security settings one day just because they're slightly annoyed at the amount that a guardrail is catching. Our security team probably put it in place. So being able to do role-based access controls for your security and governance as well is very important. How can you validate and test AI agents? There are two ways. I'm going to give a generic way and then an area way. So one is being just small batch testing. So giving it a spreadsheet, especially if you're trying to do data testing and validation, giving it an answer that you know the answer to, or giving it a question you know the answer to, and you ask a couple of versions of that, making sure that you're getting back the best options, you're getting good answers every time, even if they shift a little bit due to the temperature of the model, all of that. The second is in Airia, we have something called evaluations, where essentially you can write out questions and the expected answer, run it through an LLM, and it'll come back with all of the answers that the LLM generated, and then we will do a code-based comparison of what the expected answer was and what actually was. And so you can determine how good, essentially, your LLM is at answering the questions that you asked before you put it out into your environment. So ensuring that you have whatever minimum level of validity that you want before you roll it out. Which tool should you use for debugging your code? I'm pretty partial to Claude Code. I think it's really good. I do have some coworkers that use Brew Code internally. They like that a lot, but I think Claude Code does a really fantastic job. In my spare time, really like working on front-end design. I'm not a fantastic front-end developer, so having that to debug my code has been really fantastic. Let's see. What guardrails are most effective? So I would say it kind of depends. So I think it depends on your end users. In a healthcare environment, it's important to focus on your PII, your health information, anything like that, and depends on how tight you make them, how constrained you make them. We run on regex code because we find that that is the strongest code base to act as a net. And then you can change how constrained you really want the answer to be. So how sure does an internal LLM system need to be before it says this is absolutely a credit card number based on the rest of the query? I, in a personal experience, will always suggest putting a guardrail in for social security numbers, your email, your IP address, and your passport number. Those are and your driver's license number is a surprising one that I've had recently. Things that you should not put into an LLM. It does not ever need to know that information. One cool thing about something that we have internally is we have redact and replace. And I really like that because it allows you to ask whatever question you want. It'll take out the offending information and map it to an identifier. So if I put in my credit card number for some reason, it would map it to credit card number 1. And when that hits the LLM, it has that information, it has that context of they are asking about a credit card number. And then on the way back out, it'll rehydrate it. So your end users never experience any of that usage gap, but you still have that security in place and you can track who is putting their credit card number in. Let's see. So I'm reading one that says, I work at operations and we are trying to develop agentic AI solutions for clients, but it is quite sensitive data. Generally, I think it is a good practice to ask the client to pick out an LLM model to use for it, but how do we ensure compliance and governance? That is where your compliance and governance platform is. I have spoken to quite a few people who are building something out somewhat similar to this. They're trying to build their own security. They're trying to build their own governance, but I find that having a platform that focuses on it, that has realistically like enterprise funding, has all of the time, multiple developers to work on this, is kind of the best bet, because then you can ensure that they are following GDPR, they're following like EU AI Act if it's global, and you can then see what are your users doing. Are they going to like shadow AI sites? Are they moving beyond the scope of what you're asking them to do, even if you say use one LLM? I do really like the Cursor IDE, 100%. What is the best act which needs to follow the E? I think that HIPAA probably will be the next act that we'll see like a big AI push in, and then GDPR. I think we're going to start seeing a lot of US-based states push a lot of AI acts, and then soon we'll see kind of a federal push as well. But I do think that HIPAA will be the next to come through, because there's a lot of AI being used in medical environments right now, especially with ambient listening and transcription. So I think that that will be the next step of security and governance requirements. How do you keep API keys private in a product built by AI? I would definitely say guardrails. I would say guardrails for sure, because you can ensure that they are catching the API keys if somebody's putting them in inappropriate places. I would say one thing that you can do to ensure that you are being safe with it is avoid putting it in any code that you have in an AI run. Hard coding API keys is something that we see as a security breach pretty frequently, honestly. Can you trust Claude with coding your IP? So yes, if you are putting it through a secure platform, but I would also be careful, because again, that IP can possibly be used to train the next model. So if you are applying for some sort of patent or something like that, I personally would be very careful. And I also think this is a cost recognition thing. As much as you can do by yourself, Claude is fantastic for vibe coding. It's fantastic for being quick and helping out with those things that you're not as good at. But the more that you can do by yourself, the better that you'll be off, because you're not putting your IP in and you're saving some money in API token costs. So if you have the capabilities and you have the time, I would absolutely suggest doing it yourself. Biggest mistakes our clients make in general about AI usage. I would say first, not listening to stakeholders, so your end users. A lot of customers that we talk to, a lot of our clients that we talk to, they have an idea in their head of like, we want this wild overarching solution basically for our entire company and everybody's going to use it. Narrowing it down to a use case that even a smaller population has directly asked for and making it almost an easy win to encourage buy-in, that is a very, very quick way to, again, get buy-in and to show returned value so that you have more time to experiment. A lot of our customers, like I said, have super big ideas that take a really long time to implement and can take a really long time to roll out and get buy-in. So starting small, working your way up to a big idea. How can you measure the success of AI agents? That is different from person to person. So I measure the success of AI agents personally by the amount of time saved. Some information about me: I am a little bit definitive in my emails, and so sometimes to make them sound a little bit nicer, I will run that through AI. That's a huge time saver for me, and that is a lot of stress off of me. So I measure the success of my agent in a way that it's helping me. Some companies measure it in the time saved in monetary value. So for your developers, especially with, say, Claude Code, how much time are they saving by being able to code an agent directly rather than having to do it by hand? So it depends person to person, or depends kind of customer to customer. So you have to determine what your metric is and then start testing against it. For a startup regarding in-build and secure AI platform, how would you prioritize AI security, AI orchestration, and AI governance? So it depends on where you are in your AI journey. I personally would say that I would say security first, 100%. And then I would say orchestration and then governance. I think governance is really fantastic. And I think it's a great, great thing to have and absolutely something you should pay attention to. But you can't really govern something that you haven't built yet. But if you really like building AI agents through code, I would say security and governance go first. So it depends on if you prefer to do a more like a vibe coding style of building agents, then orchestration for sure. But if you prefer to do like hand-grown or homegrown, hand-built agents through code, then AI and governance, then orchestration. Would I say homegrown constitutions or relying on constitutions at a third party is better for enterprise level clients? I'm going to go with both. And I know I've been saying this a lot. It depends on the customer or client themselves. So another error or big misstep that we see is trying to implement a new solution too fast and too aggressively. So if homegrown constitutions flow better in your internal build, then definitely do that. But if you are pretty new to things and you want to try a third party that might make life easier, do that. You don't want to try and change too many things too fast. That is very frequently why AI implementations fail, realistically, is because you're trying to change a lot of things really, really quickly. So meeting your end users where they're at, whether that be through your interface, so like how they're actually interacting with the agent or how they're building the agents, is really, really important. Okay. As an LLM interface adds up to latency in response times, assuming we are one of those cloud models, how do you manage the latency with all of these additional layers? So I will say that adding that layer of security adds a little bit of latency. It is pretty negligible, but you're still adding an additional piece of processing in front of or behind your LLM, depending on where you're putting that guardrail. So I would say you have to determine how important latency is to you first and how important security is to you. So weighing those two out. We have done a pretty good job. Like, I use an agent with a guardrail every single day, and I don't notice the difference between using that and a single provider. It is pretty negligible, but I would say that it balances having that security aspect in place. If I accidentally put an email into an LLM that has customer information or even like proprietary information about our company, I can be safe and comfortable knowing that even if it takes a little bit longer processing, I have not just given this data to an LLM to potentially be processed for the next training. What is my workflow for evaluating which LLM to use in which situation as part of my work? So I will say I have been a little bit, I've gotten a little bit of extra wiggle room here because our platform allows you to compare different builds against each other. So you can compare up to 10 against one another. So when I'm considering different LLMs, I can do a couple of different like drafts of it and then compare how they stack up in latency and cost in response, and then determine what's best for me. I almost always start using GPT-4.1 Nano. That's my personal favorite due to the response time and the cost. But recently I've been having to use a lot of like Sonnet models, so Claude 4 Sonnet. And so being able to compare those in a interface where I can see directly what's going on, how much they cost, has been really, really helpful to me. But sorry, that was a little bit of a long-winded way for answering that. My workflow is I will start with GPT-1 Nano or 4.1 Nano. If that doesn't work, I will start creating different drafts with different models and test out where I feel like the discrepancy and bottleneck is. And once I get a good response, I stick with that. So the next question, if you're trying to get into building AI agents with limited coding experience, should you start with coding, or is there a platform that allows you to build agents? There are a ton of platforms out there to let you build agents. You just have to determine what's best for what you're looking for. If you want to build with code, then I I see a lot of people build with Python, but if you are just interested in like AI in general, building agents, then there are absolutely platforms out there, including Airia, that you don't have to know any code for whatsoever. And then as vibe coding is becoming more pertinent, honestly, being able to code 100% and being super fluent in a coding language is becoming less necessary. So are there publicly hosted models that promise not to use your prompts or document for future training? You can make that agreement with publicly hosted models. So our platform has an agreement with every model that we utilize to not train on data. You can have that, you can make that agreement with them. Your company can broker it. You as an individual can broker that agreement with all of the model providers. It just depends on how you want to do that. At a free level for all of the publicly hosted models, you do agree in your terms and conditions to allow them to train on that data. That's why it's kind of nice to have a platform, is you have like all of your tracking and information in one place, and you have the understanding that none of your data is going to be used to train. Typically, I will say from experience that I've like learned here and in my own personal room, is experimental models will take the most amount of data to train. Are there any courses? Interesting. So I personally haven't taken any courses. I did a little bit of trial by fire here, learning all of the different use cases, but use cases are kind of difficult because they are very personalized to the individuals. So I don't know if there are any specific courses. I do think that prompt engineering courses can be really important. You can use an LLM to prompt. I do, but I also go through and nitpick it and change it the way that I want to. And the way that I was able to do that is via prompt engineering courses. So I think that those are always really helpful. There are also quite a few podcasts that talk about kind of the next steps in whether you're looking for AI builds or AI security. And I think those are really helpful as well for learning the landscape. Even if they're not directly helpful for building agents, you can understand what's coming next and what you can anticipate. I don't use a ton of I don't have any preferred libraries or SDKs, honestly, for Python. It's mostly custom. And that's just because it's so broad for what I'm building, depending on what I'm doing. My data management or RAG stack for personal projects. Honestly, I will let other people in the chat answer that one, just because I don't use a ton of RAG for my personal projects. I prefer to start from scratch, and I don't typically add additional information into it. But I will talk about my thoughts on fine-tuning versus RAG. So I think that depending on what you're doing, a little additional context about me, my background is in manufacturing, so I think fine-tuning is very important, and that it can be really helpful, but I also think that it can be very expensive and it can put you in a little bit of a box. So I think that utilizing RAG is very helpful because you can kind of adjust the data as it's being uploaded. Even if it's static, you can update it as frequently as you need to make your agent more versatile. Whereas with a fine-tuned model, depending on when you're fine-tuning it, it can go out of date pretty quickly. Again, this is such a rapidly evolving environment. I remember when I first started like really focusing on AI, the Claude 3.5 and 3.7 had just come out and they're already gone. And so fine-tuning yourself into almost like a box makes it a little difficult to progress. That's my opinion though. Does Airia's enterprise level complexity make it harder to deploy and manage compared to simpler AI platforms? I don't think so. So I work with kind of a widespread of enterprise customers. We work with like the enterprise level customers that are massive and have huge deployments. And we also work with like very small companies that'll have like 2, maybe 3 people. The scalability is important, so being able to interact with smaller groups of people versus massive groups of people, but being able to kind of connect doesn't change. It's just the end user experience. So like we've been working really hard to move into an ability for enterprise spaces. I'll say that. So like we have Slack interfaces, we have Teams interfaces, we have WhatsApp interfaces, and those are for your enterprise clients, right? That meeting people where they are, but for smaller companies, they are really okay with utilizing like our platform's front end or even a chat widget or an email. And so it's just what works for you and your company. I hope that answers. What is the most surprising insight I've gained from working in the agentic AI space? I will definitely say the security. Before I started working here, I didn't really conceptualize how important security and governance and visibility was for AI. It was like, yeah, I'm asking the question, I know what I'm asking, and it doesn't matter. But working in this space and watching everything evolve and even watching like the missteps that have happened in the agentic AI space, I have a very deep understanding and respect for how much security should go into your LLMs and your AI agents. And that's not really something I had focused on a ton. Again, my background is very heavily in like manufacturing, supply chain, things like that, even within AI. And so understanding how this somewhat volatile space can almost interact with those other important facets was very surprising to me. So learning how important that governance is, how important it is that I can see what somebody else in my company is asking my agent, all of these different things, even just from like an improvability standpoint. So did I build this agent correctly? Am I prompting it with the right stuff so that I can ask the right questions? And then also from a security perspective, like I didn't even think that somebody would put their credit card information into this agent. What can I do to adjust that? That's been really, really surprising to me. Pros and cons of using agent platforms versus using Python. I would say agent platforms, and I am biased here, is speed of prototyping and speed of deployment. So being able to have those like preset pieces in place to make it easier to make those end connections or pull in specific models, just making it easier to interact with everything. I would say a pro to Python is the customizability of it. So you can be pretty custom within a platform, but you are still a little bit constrained within what resources are available and what that platform deems to be the next logical step. Within Python, if you know how to do it, then you can build whatever you want. So I would call that probably the pros and cons of using both. Also, Python, you don't have as much security in there. I've harped on that a lot, but I do firmly believe that it is important. I would say when you are using Python, you can't ensure complete security and visibility, whereas if you're using a platform that has spent developer time on doing it, you have a little bit more comfort and clarity in it. That looks like the end of the questions, and we only have about 5 minutes left. I'm very, very glad to get to talk to all of you today. Thank you so much for letting me come out here and talk about something I'm very passionate about. I look forward to getting to see any other questions in the chat. I hope everybody had a good time, but thank you so much. I appreciate it.